African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised. Good morning, good morning. Dawn has just broken here in the northeast corner of the world's most magnificent country. That is an elephant, and you are watching Safari Live.
Ready.
Standing by.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Hello again. We're just going to move down into this little drainage system to watch these elephants. Seems to be a herd of them around here. My name is James Hendry, in case you're on this for the very first time. Craig is on camera, aka Batman. And on the other vehicle we have Jamie Patterson, and she is going to look for some hyenas, and she is being filmed by the diminutive but highly impressive Wim Durenbrak. In the final control, Rebecca Christensen and Geraldine Fraser-Moleketi are looking after things when you talk to us, and they talk to us, to me. And that's how you talk to us. Hashtags for our live, questions at WildEarthTV. All the ways you get hold of us. The latter, an email address, the former, a Twitter hashtag handle. Us your questions or comments through the course of the day, and we'd love to hear from you. That is an elephant, and we will have another look at it now, and then hopefully we will find a small leopard in and about this area. This is where Shongile and Hosanna, I almost forgot, the year-old cubs today were playing around yesterday evening. So let us not forget that, everybody. An auspicious day for Safari Live. Two of our very, very favourite characters, of course, Hosanna and Shongile, the two little leopards, are 1 year old today, the prince and princess. And we will be having a fireside chat to celebrate their birthday and allow Brent Leo Smith the chance to sing to us this afternoon. That's something to look forward to sing us happy birthday. And we're going to have that fireside chat at 7:15. At 7:15, the last 15 minutes of the Sunset Safari. So that's this evening at 7:15 Central African time. And we'll have a little highlights package of the lives of those special little cats. In the meantime, we're going to enjoy this elephant. And I don't know when this elephant's birthday is. Do you, Craig? Not 100% sure, says Craig. Yes, no, I'm not sure that anyone is, really. We don't necessarily know this elephant. And, of course, this is a question that people often ask. Do you name the elephants? Are the elephants as well known as the cats? And they would be, because their characters are as different, as varied, as individual. But because they roam so widely, we just don't get to spend the same amount of time with individual elephants, so that we don't ever get to know them quite the same way, which is a bit sad, because they really are quite something. Craig, if we come up here, see a cow coming through on the top of the bank there. We're looking due east, everyone, and so that's where the sun is sort of attempting to come through the clouds. I'm told it's 22 degrees centigrade, 71 degrees Fahrenheit. Not sure I believe that. It's a little bit cooler than that, I think. And it sounds to me like about 8 or so elephants in this little herd. And they're all feeding in a very beautiful area of the reserve that we're seldom able to drive, because there aren't any roads in there. So unless it's a sighting, we don't go in there, but we often walk in there. And there's some really pretty little gullies lined with tambuti trees and clearings that the elephants are now using the grasses out of. Somewhat sort of, shall we say, diminished dawn chorus today. probably because of the lack of sun. But that may change a little bit later. Still the ubiquitous doves and the old francolin and certainly the grey-headed sparrow. Alrighty, let's head across to Jamie Patterson. She can give you a better idea of what she's going to do this morning and this afternoon, I suppose, if you happen to be in the very far western hemisphere. I'm going to sit right here with these elephants.
And a very good morning to all of you, and welcome on our sunrise safari. My name is Jamie, as James has already intimated, and this morning VM is on camera with me. And James says I must give you a better idea as to what I'm doing. Well, I am on my way. Actually, I'm pretty sure most of you can guess at what I'm doing if you weren't watching the pre-show. I am, of course, on my way towards that newly located hyena den that Tristan found, and where yesterday we had a chance to see two tiny little cubs. Oh, hi. You're not that tiny. You are spotted, though. You're definitely not the animal I was looking for, but you'll do. Good morning, madam. I bet you individual giraffes, in fact, not I bet you, I know individual giraffes would also have distinctive personalities, just like our cat characters, like James was talking about in our elephants. Perhaps not as distinctive, though. Good morning. Are you enjoying a buffalo thorn? Hello, girl. It's all right. Keeping a close eye on us. As always, accompanied by her oxpecker friends. We might be treated to a glorious shot, pity about the poles, we might be treated to a glorious shot of a giraffe silhouetted against the sunrise. Nope, that tree just held too much of an attraction for her. Quite a young female giraffe, and I know that just in terms of her size. She's still quite small. Here she goes. Thank you, girl. Sunrise, giraffe. Perfect way to start a morning. I actually can't think of the last time. Oh no, I do know where I last saw a giraffe. Actually, it wasn't that long ago. Has felt as though they're relatively absent. For our newer viewers who are wondering about the poles behind the giraffe, just to explain, because I just said there's pity about the poles, we're on a main access road, the southern boundary of the reserve known as Djuma, which means that, well, of course, lodges have to get power somehow. So the power travels along the power lines to the various lodges. So you're still in the wild. These are still wild giraffe. It just so happens that we've just got some electricity poles running through. The oxpecker's hopping about on the top of its head. I wonder how you get used to the feeling of oxpeckers constantly. I mean, obviously the animals don't always, especially if they're pecking around ears or around eyes, then they shake them off. Oops, sorry, I'm just listening to the search for the lions to the north of us. But it must be a very strange sensation indeed, something hopping along, claws digging into you. I suppose when they're performing the service that they are, which is removing, oh goodness, all of those embedded ticks. I think perhaps I should get an oxpecker, Viam. I think so. That would help. We should have a pet oxpecker that comes with us on walk. There you go, Olga. You were wondering what the birds were doing. At the moment they're flying, but what they were doing was helping to remove some of those parasites that are attached to the skin of the giraffe. So all of the animals out here, as they wander through the grass and wander through the trees, they pick up ticks. And unlike the ticks in certain parts of Europe or the North Americas, they do not carry Lyme disease. They sometimes carry a bacteria called rickettsia, which causes tick bite fever, but most of the animals here are immune to that. So all they really are is a serious irritation. And speaking from experience, tick bites are exceptionally itchy. So having the oxpeckers hopping around on the back of oneself, picking off the ticks, is a very useful way of getting to those hard-to-reach places, behind the ears, even around the eyes, because, of course, when you don't have thumbs, it's not all that easy. And it's not all that easy when you have thumbs either. I've currently got a horrible tick bite on my cheekbone, which I'm thoroughly unimpressed by. So that's why I think we need a pet oxpecker. they can come and help to keep us tick-free. I'm not going anywhere near my eyes, though. Ooh. There we go. Breakfast. There's an oxpecker hanging around her knee there. It's actually not her knee. No, it is her knee. Sorry, that is her knee. Here we go, fluttering about. Again, you can just see those small black dots. Those are all embedded ticks. Ticks have unbelievably powerful mouth parts, as I'm sure those of you with pets will be familiar with that. Trying to remove the odd tick that's managed to escape your tick treatment plan. Trying to get it out of their skin. That's why they need oxpeckers. And sometimes oxpeckers, almost all of the time, oxpeckers are extremely beneficial, and sometimes they make life really miserable if they have an injury. Oh, this is a bird that is completely specialized at tick removal. So Jack, yes, absolutely, ticks are the main diet of oxpeckers, as well as blood and mucus, which is why I said sometimes oxpeckers can make life miserable for the animals. Because if they have a scratch or an injury, the oxpeckers will worry at it. They'll bite away and they'll be able to, or they'll stop it from healing. That's a juvenile, by the way. It's a family of red-billed oxpeckers, but the juveniles have the dark bill, just like that. So if you look at these birds, it went behind the giraffe's leg just because I said that. If you have a look at the birds when we next see one, they are adapted very specially to cling onto the smooth coats of animals. So their tail feathers are stiffened and their toes are very well adapted for clinging onto the fur, the coarse fur, which means they can hang upside down, they can clamber up and down the legs. And it does also mean that their diet is very, very high in salt. They're also one of the few birds that will eat wax, and in this particular case, earwax of the animals. But ticks are their main diet. One oxpecker can eat easily 1,000 ticks per day. And because the diet is so salty, they very much enjoy a drink every couple of hours. So they'll fly backwards and forwards from water. The sun is rising. The morning is moving on. The morning is moving on. We're on our way to the hyena den. Let's head out to join Tristan on foot.
Morning, everybody, and welcome to a beautiful sunrise safari. My name is Tristan. I'm here with Jandre, and we are out on a bushwalk, and it could not be better conditions for a bushwalk. It is absolutely still. The sun is just starting to come up, and there's a few clouds around, so it's nice and cool this morning. So it promises to be a really good morning to be out here on foot. Now, last night I had a report that possibly there were some wild dogs heading slowly this way, so myself and Jandre and our security detail Rexon are going to head out towards the western side of Djuma and to see if we can maybe find any signs of these wild dogs. They obviously do move quite long distances, and it's not necessarily a guarantee that they would have come this way, but their general direction was heading in towards this area, so we're going to try and see what we can find. I also did have some audio of the hyenas, so I know Jamie is going down towards the den. It sounded like it was coming from that side, so it's maybe not a bad idea that Jamie's heading down there. Hopefully she'll be lucky and there'll be some hyenas at the den. It's really quite exciting to have them calling again on the property and to be here quite a lot. We've seen lots of tracks for them the last few days, and there has been quite a nice presence of them, so really, really, really good to have these hyenas around. Now, as I was saying, it is an absolutely beautiful morning. It's the perfect conditions to be out here. Generally when you walking, you want nice, cool, still mornings. It's really very, very pleasant. So I'm sure we are going to have a fantastic morning out here. And isn't it just incredible with that sunrise as well? It was beautiful sunrise this morning. I know you spent some time with the giraffe in the sunrise. Must have been very, very, very pretty. Giraffe are often a good exponent for sunrises because you get really nice silhouette shots, which is always very, very cool. Now, other than the hyenas, while we've been walking along, we haven't heard too much. There hasn't been any audio for any lions or leopard, but we'll certainly keep our ears out. It's often this time of day that both of those will start to call, so we'll hopefully get some sort of indication of one or the other. It is obviously the royals' birthday, well, the children's birthday should I say, so hopefully we'll be able to find them. I know James, I think, is on the lookout for them, so hopefully we'll come right with them too. It would be really, really nice to have them on their birthday, so it would be good if we can find them. Alright, so while we go look around and see if we can find any sign of these dogs, we're going to go across to James, who I think is still on the search for the royal kids.
Right, we're just coming back along the drainage here. The elephants are coming down off these lovely little clearings and to feed in the thick verdancy that is the Mloamati drainage. I did go and do a turn around Twin Dams, but we didn't have any luck with tracks or leopards, and Jamie, who's just popped out onto the Gowrie main road, sort of quite far to the west of where we are now, says she thinks she's got tracks of all three of them there, so she's just going to assess whether they've gone south into Little Gowrie, which is the reserve to the south of us, where we can't go, but they can. There are the elephants, coming down in a little line. It's quite sweet, really. So we'll keep you posted on the birthday royals. Craig, there's some big ones coming down to the left. We'll stop here. They're just having a listen to us. Here they come. This is wonderful. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Very clearly on a little mission to go somewhere, and that tail stuck out behind her, indicating, well, not quite discomfort, but not entirely happy with what's going on here. We'll just ease up behind them. I think they're probably going to go off towards Twin Dams Road. Hello, Red. That's a good, simple Twitter handle. You say, have I ever seen a stampede of elephants? Well, yes, I have. I've seen a number of stampedes of elephants, but, I guess it depends on your definition of stampede. Herds of sort of 50 or so, that's about the biggest I've seen in this area, and I've seen them all sort of trumpeting and getting very upset and running great distances. But I've never seen one of those huge herds of Botswana, which can be up to 1,000 strong sometimes. That's an agglomeration of these matriarchal groups, especially during times of dry. And they will sometimes get on the move, going quite fast, and something will spook them, and then that can be quite terrifying. I haven't ever seen one of those. And I'm going to do my level best to avoid any form of stampede here. One doesn't want to have a stampede of elephants in the confines of the Mloamati drainage. Oof! Powerful smell of elephant dung. We'll just stop over here for a little while. Let them get used to us. Also just a little bit nervous that if we move forward we're going to have to push the aerial down slightly, which might result in a loss of signal. Let me see if I can angle us slightly differently. See, we've got to get underneath that tree. We did it. We're okay. There we go. And we have the elephants at eye level. They're not being particularly confiding, but they're not that relaxed. Every time we get this sort of close, they move off which you don't really want. So we'll just give them some time and space. Here comes one there. It's a beautiful morning. I'm pretty sure this cloud will burn off and it will turn into a rather special day. It's already burning off now. Michael, you're wondering about the travel plans of the elephants, and do different herds have different areas that they prefer to feed? And the answer, Michael, is yes, to a certain extent. I mean, they go where they have to go, but certainly some herds, based on the matriarch's knowledge, will go towards some areas for water and some other areas perhaps for marula fruits when that's the time of the year, or good grazing. So yes, absolutely, they do have different spots that they like to go, dependent on the time of year, and I'm sure dependent on the whims of the matriarch of the herd. There they go, wandering through there now. What I didn't show you, and what Craig hasn't seen yet, are some nyala, and they are just watching us through there. Now, my current sort of theme is the theme of hiding versus camouflage. Now you see a bit of both there. That is a very good colour for an animal to be in that environment. You can see an almost dead match for the stumps or twigs around it. Nice breaking up of the outline with the stripes. But to a large extent, the way that animal is remaining invisible, it could be bright pink, it's hiding behind the bushes. And people often say, gee whiz, look how camouflaged that animal is, I can't even see it. What it's doing is actually just hiding behind a bush, and it could be bright pink. Let's move a little bit forward. There's two nyala bulls. Hello, yes. Good day. Alright, Batman, move with care. There we go. Batman moving like a smooth bat today. A smooth moving bat. That's rather special. And they become very confiding to the nyala. Often the ones around the camp, more so than these ones. But even these chaps here, that don't have much experience of people, have learnt. I'm just going to try and drive up here. You can get to the elephant. Everybody by continually referring to things like drainage lines. What we mean is dry riverbed, Emruth, and the Umlwamati is the name of this one. Some people will call it the Molwati. I have chosen that slightly because Molwati is not in fact any recognized word in Shangaan or Xitsonga, and so I've chosen to go with Umlwamati on discussion with Herbert, because Umlwamati basically means the fighting water, and that just makes a bit more sense really. There are those Nyala. We will head back to the elephants, which are just making their way out of this thicket now. Well, I haven't heard anything further from Jamie on what's happened to those little leopards or where they are. Now you can perhaps hear the increase in the dawn chorus as the sun has started to emerge. You can see the sun now shining off that Nyala's horns. The raven would like to know why they have got mohawk on the back. The raven, that is probably what we'd term a sexually selected characteristic. So there's no real physical advantage to having it other than to attract mates. So a little bit like a peacock's tail. And there is no help to the Nyala by having that mane or mohawk down the back. Well, they use it when they're fighting each other, and when they're trying to impress ladies, it stands straight up. And it's actually quite impressive. It goes very sort of, like a white and black mohawk. It comes. Such lovely vegetation, this. Let's just wait here and wait for him to come out the other side. He's very peaceful, you see. And I'm just having a bit of a giggle because the other one is now coming out behind, obviously inspired by the courage of his predecessor. This is a lovely gentle sighting for the morning, I must say. And then we'll try and follow up on those elephants as well. I just don't want to go crashing after them. We're just a little bit nervous. Oh, and you might be able to hear the lovely sound of the southern boo-boo. When they call down here in the thick vegetation, it echoes through the leaves. Stanley, Stanley, Stanley. Now, I'm not admonishing a person called Stanley. That is, in fact, his Twitter handle. Stanley, Stanley, Stanley. Brand new viewer. Lovely to have you with us. Thank you for your question. You say, how is it that we can tell the difference between a kudu and a Nyala? Stanley, Stanley, Stanley. They are, well, superficially similar, I suppose, but they're not actually very much the same at all. A kudu will be much larger than that. A big bull will be much larger than that, almost twice the size. They will have the spiraled horns. Those chaps have got horns that, yes, they turn slightly, but they're not quite spiraled. A kudu's looks like it's got corkscrews attached to the top of its head, and they are grayer and browner than that, if you like. They're not quite as charcoal coloured as those chaps. And then, of course, the females, the same colours as the males, grey-brown, and the female Nyala are chestnut coloured. But it's mainly the size. A kudu's twice the size of a Nyala. Right, let's move on through here, see if we can catch up with those elephants. And unfortunately, Jamie has ascertained that the cubs have gone into Little Gowrie. Michael, you want to know if we can go to the den that they were born in if we can't find them today as a sort of tribute? Michael, we could, but we will not probably be able to get signal in this vehicle. We might be able to do it in Rusty. And I'm not actually entirely sure exactly which cave Brent saw them in. So maybe Brent can do that this afternoon, because he did actually find them, of course. Let's wind our gentle way through here. I haven't often driven through here. Alrighty. We'll try and find these elephants, which are very big, and apparently Tristan has got something that is very small.
We are indeed. We have an absolute frenzy of activity here. So what we have is a whole colony of termites that have been out during the night feeding, and these guys are all busy stripping the bark of these fallen over trees, and they are feverishly working before the sun gets up and they get too exposed. They know at this time of the day, as soon as that sun is up, that lots and lots of birds are going to be out, and the birds would absolutely love to snack on a few of these termites. And it was pretty incredible. When we first got here, there was just termites absolutely everywhere, but as we walked up, our feet obviously disturbed them a little bit, and there was a few head shakes from some of them, and that then sent the signal, and you can actually see them doing it here. So as I walk up, look at how the soldiers are busy head shaking, and that's a warning to everybody else to start getting back into the holes to be able to be there for protection. And have a look at these soldiers. You can see if I put a bit of grass there, how they try and attack it. So they'll use these big pincers that they have on the front of their heads, and they then use those to basically injure or maim anything that comes near them. And these little guys are very, very feisty. So there we go. You can have a look at that. So this guy's been absolutely latched on now, and he's holding on for dear life. So pretty incredible. You can see those massive mandibles that have closed in. Now if that was your skin, that would be quite sore. It's not something that you would really want to have latching onto you, but for the termites, this is their absolute protection. So for them, they will need these guys to protect them while the workers quickly scurry back in with food so that they can get into the mound with no problem. Isn't that absolutely incredible? So those little termites, when they do that, back in the day, they actually used to use them as stitches. So if you had a cut, just like you saw there how it latched on, they would grab these and put them on. That little mandible would close over the wound, and then they would break the body off and just leave the head, and that head would then stay on until that wound closed. Isn't that absolutely incredible? And you can actually see how they've made a walkway here from walking up and down during the night, harvesting all these little sticks. You can see where they've stripped off all the bark on these sticks here, and they've then carried all that nutrients back inside here. But absolutely unbelievable. And like I say, when we first arrived, the noise from these guys was absolutely incredible. They were busy feeding around here, and you could just hear all these little bodies moving. It sounded really like, I'm trying to think of something that would be able to describe the sound to you, but it was just like a scurrying of hard insects, and so there was just these kind of scraping noises everywhere. Absolutely incredible. So nice find. They're not going to be out for much longer. Like I say, as soon as the sun gets up a little bit, then they're going to start probably ducking down and into these holes to get away from any predators. But amazing find. Really happy about that. Alright, so we're going to carry on, and we're going to go across to Jamie and see what updates she's got from the hyena den.
We have just arrived at the den, and one of the little cubs ran out off to the west of us. And I'm just sitting very quietly because I wanted to just give them 5 minutes of the benefit of the doubt. So what happened yesterday is we didn't expect to see the cubs, and the cubs ran away, and I left because I didn't want them to feel startled or too far away from their den site while Mom was not there. But now we've just been sitting here for about 2 minutes, and this cub's already coming back, which means we can actually probably give them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. It's stopped now. As soon as I started talking, it stopped its approach. It's slowly but surely moving through this very thick stuff over here. I haven't seen the second cub, so I think the second cub is still in the den site itself. But obviously it does, perhaps it's not deep enough, or perhaps it's not excavated enough for those cubs, because they're quite large cubs, to feel comfortable. So I'm not going to overstay my welcome. I'm going to give it just a few minutes. There's no sign of Gwen, so I don't want to be frightening the cubs while she's not there. Ideally, we want to begin this habituation process with Mum so that the cubs can learn from her behavior that we're not a threat. But the fact that the cubs started coming back almost immediately suggests to me it might not be as not tedious, but as drawn out a process as we might otherwise have thought. Unfortunately, the cubs stopped making its way back towards the den. So I'll give it another minute or so, and then we'll leave. We just have to patiently wait. So for our new viewers, this is a hyena den site. But it's the den site, flies, please stop sitting on my face. It's the den site of quite a low-ranking female. She's very relaxed around vehicles, but about 8 months ago she moved these brand new little cubs to an area, and I don't know where exactly she went, because I don't think she went to the same den site that the rest of the clan went to. The reason I say that is because there were other guides in the Manuleti visiting the den site of our clan, but I think wherever she took these cubs to was a much quieter spot, because these cubs are not used to vehicles at all. They're frightened of vehicles. Now, I don't see any sign of the second little head poking out. I'm probably going to leave them. I'm quite encouraged, though. I'm encouraged that that little cub decided to walk back towards us. It's a good sign. And I'm betting on the natural curiosity of hyenas and their natural boldness to actually overcome the fear that they have for the vehicles very quickly. And the reason that we're doing this is because Gwen is very comfortable with vehicles. So it would be really nice to get her cubs to the point, because otherwise you can imagine what it will be like for them. If they're not used to vehicles around here, now growing up in this area, they're going to see cars constantly passing. So it would be nice to actually have them relax and feel like we're not a threat in a place that they feel comfortable, rather than when they start wandering out with Mom, all of a sudden being terrorized by the presence of these safari vehicles. That's why we want to do it in a way that is best for them, and it's not a sudden, it's not throwing them into the deep end of exposure to safari vehicles. But this cub has ceased its forward motion towards the den. So I think, let me go backwards just a little bit. Let's try that. Perhaps give them slightly more. I've stopped much further back than I might otherwise have. Ah, I see you. I see you. It's alright. I'm just going to leave the engine running for a second. There they both go. There they go. I can just see spots moving through the vegetation. Alright. These cubs are a little bit too skittish. We'll have to wait until Gwen comes back before we can do this process. So I'm going to move out. First I'm going to start my vehicle. I'm just going to let the engine run for a second so that they get used to the sound of it. And then we're going to take several steps back. And this whole process is going to be like this. It's going to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I don't know how long it's going to take us. I would guess it's going to be my guess would be it's going to be very easy to do when Mom is here. They've gone into this drainage dip here. I'm not as worried anymore. I'm not as frightened anymore of scaring them completely away from the den site, because they clearly don't go far. And they went into that gap over there. Oh, little ones. I think this process is going to be quite quick when Mom is around, but it's just a question of timing. No, they're running a little bit too far. I'm going to move completely out so that they can come back to the den site and feel, in theory, I'm going to go. I can see, I've just saw the flash of spots running quite far away, so I'm going to pull out completely so that they can come back to the safety of their den. They're still quite young. Brendan, you want to know how far away a hyena can hear? Much, much further than we can. I'm not quite sure how we can put a distance on it, because it very much depends upon the sound that they're listening to, I imagine. Obviously, they're going to be highly attuned to the whoops and calls of hyenas. So my guess would be that their hearing is probably about I don't know, how many times better than a human being is a dog's hearing? Because I imagine that a hyena's hearing is much the same. I mean, they can hear hyena whoops far further than we can, and lions' roars and so on. I mean, that's easily 10 miles, 20, possibly even 20 miles they could hear a hyena whoop. But I think perhaps it's easier, rather than saying how far away they can hear something, it's perhaps easier to describe it as in proportion to humans' hearings, or in comparison to human hearings. Humans' hearing. I think this process is going to be quick when Mom's back, but we've just got to get the timing right. We've just got to wait until Gwen is in the den, teaching her cubs how to react around vehicles. Sandy, I've already spoken to the other guides in this area. I've told them that the cubs are very skittish, and although the den is active, there's no point in going at this point because the cubs are not going to be visible to people for a while. Obviously, every guide in this area is completely ethical. Now, I'm not too worried about anybody abusing the hyena den too much, or not at all. But we have spoken to them and just let them know that we're going to try and I've spoken to them and let them know we're going to try and get them comfortable. Okay, well, patience is the way that everything works out here. Let's go back to James and his dailies.
I agree completely that patience is the only way out here. It can be extremely frustrating sometimes waiting for things like hyena to habituate, but once it happens, it really is tremendously rewarding, and you just can't really push things. Well, we've sat with the same herd of elephants. They're now feeding along basically the same line as a tributary of the Mlwamati that flows pretty much from where we turned off the main drainage, and the herd of elephants is feeding towards Treehouse Dam on this drainage. And they're now spread out. I think they're probably about 12 animals or so, and they're spread over an area of about, I don't know, say 2 acres, 1 hectare odd. Let's just go a little bit forward. There's the southern boo-boo again. It's amazing, and often people say, do elephants lie down? We've just seen a little one try and have a bit of a snooze, but there you can get a perspective of them through the drainage there, and they're all, I mean, the slopes that they're climbing up are very steep. There we go. Rapier tusks, of course, which mercifully seem to be just used at this stage for chipping off bark. Dana, an interesting one, and I'd love to know where this comes from, what which part of the ear you mean. You say, do elephants use their ears to balance when they're going up and down steep slopes? Dana, do you mean the inner ear? You mean in the same way that you and I use our ears to balance? If so, then yes, absolutely. I think they use that all the time, and I'm sure the inner ear plays a bigger role when they're on uneven ground. In terms of the outside of the ear, though, that big heavy ear, no, I don't think they use that to balance at all. I think it's purely there to cool them and to indicate their mood sometimes. But yes, I'm sure the inner ear, much the same way as ours is used for balance on them too. There we are. They're all having quite a nice relaxed feed along here. Betty, I'm not sure I can answer that question. You say, why are elephants' ears turned back on the top? You mean folded back like that? I think it's because the structural integrity of the ear eventually starts to become weaker towards the outer edges, and therefore it's going to flop naturally in the direction that it most normally gets blown, and that's back, I suppose. So I think some elephants have ears that flop forward, but that's normally when they've lost the structural integrity of the entire ear. But if you look at that one there, you see it's pretty hard and structurally stiff all the way to the edges. And, you know, the bits at the top are just folded over that way, because that's how they fall. Of course, the ear is on the outside of that flap in the same way that yours and my ears are on the outside of our ear flap. And so there's no protection for the ear from that great big flapping piece of skin. Right, well, I think they've disappeared sufficiently now. We should probably move on from them. I'll just quickly go around the corner here. There were a few more down this way, and I wonder if they won't head towards Treehouse Dam for their morning coffee. They might do that. It really is a very pleasant morning. Lovely temperature. I hope it doesn't get too hot. I doubt that it will. Here we go. We're going to have one last look at these elephants before we head across to Tristan and his worms. He's got a couple of worms he'd like to show you. I think maybe this one, Craig. There's a young bull just emerging into the light. See, as the light cuts through here. Alright everybody, let's head across to the worms that Tristan would like to show you. I'm going to move on from these elephants and see what else we can find. Apparently some alarm calling is going on around the Gallagher waterhole. Perhaps the wild dogs have come through there. Who knows? I'll go and find out. Until then, enjoy the caterpillars.
So from very, very large, big animals that James has got, to possibly the tiniest of tiny little caterpillars, these guys are absolutely minute. I'm going to put my little pinky finger there, and you can actually see then the difference between them and my finger. Now, I don't have the biggest hands in the world, and so to see how little these guys are is absolutely incredible. Now, I'm not 100% sure which species of caterpillar they are. They look very, very similar to the ones that James is busy growing and busy trying to feed and keep alive to get an ID on them. They are on the exact same plant that James found them, so I would imagine that they are the same species. But you can see slowly but surely they're eating their way through that leaf and making a good dent as they go. But they are absolutely incredible. They're not very fast moving or very active little things, but just the size of them is absolutely incredible. I'm not quite sure how Jean-Andre actually spotted that. So we were walking along and he just kind of stopped and noticed these tiny little caterpillars on this little tree. So really, really cool sighting of them. What we might do is actually take them with us and add them to James's collection and see if they are indeed the same species. It would be quite interesting to know that they start out that small. I know the ones that James has got are slightly larger, so it would be quite interesting to see if they are indeed the same species. Now, before we found them, we also found a really pretty little caterpillar. Alright, so you can see this guy has latched himself onto a stalk of grass, and you can actually see what's quite interesting here is that it's got sets of legs in the front of the body and sets of legs at the back. And so when this one moves, it moves just like an inchworm. So it will push this whole body up like that, scoot these little legs across, and then it will pull the whole body forward, and these then slide forward, which is really, really cool. But probably the coolest thing about this little caterpillar is if I turn it like that, you will notice that over here it's got two little eyes. Alright, and so those are little markings on its body that are there to basically serve a purpose of fooling predators, that it's got eyes on the back of its body and that it's able to see them coming. Even though it's not really eyes, those are just markings. It fools the predator, and the predator thinks it's being watched, and so will then move away, which is pretty cool. So a very, very clever little marking to have. You find it on quite a few animals and quite a few bird species. They have these sort of eye markings on the back, and like I say, generally it's with smaller things that are hunted quite extensively. So it's exactly the same as when you see things like leopard. When they're hunting impalas and they're seen, then they really do give up. They don't actually spend too much time hunting further, and so it's the same thing for this little caterpillar. It's trying to avoid being hunted by having those two little spots on it. But isn't he really cool? Like I say, he's firmly latched onto this piece of grass, not going absolutely anywhere. And the camouflage is pretty good as well. You can imagine if this goes onto a piece of bark, how difficult it is going to be to see that. On this bright green stalk, it's quite easy, but if they go onto a tree or onto a branch, you're going to really, really struggle to get any sort of sign of that. But really, really cool. Again, I'm not 100% sure what the species is. I don't know if anybody is able to find out while we're busy on the walk and give us some feedback. It'd be nice if we could hear from you guys. So just remember, if you use Twitter, use the hashtag SafariLive, or you can send through to questions@WildEarth.TV. So if there's any budding entomologists out there that can ID this guy, I'd be really interested to know. Alright, but we're going to put him back in the grass and let him carry on. Just prop him up like that. There we go. And like I say, we'll probably take the leaf of the caterpillars and take them with. I know James is, like I said, is growing his, so we're going to add these guys and see if we can grow them out like James is doing, and see if they are indeed the same species. These Waltherias, which is the type of plant that they're on, have been a hive of activity for multiple different species, so it'll be really interesting to see if they are indeed the exact same ones. But they are absolutely minute. I still can't get over how small they are. And you can see how they're literally eating their way slowly but surely through the leaf, eating all the green sections, which is what they want. That's the areas that contain the most nutrients. So that's where they're getting all the chlorophyll. There'll be cellulose, lignin in all those cells that they're busy feeding off. So the perfect place for little caterpillars to feed. Amazing. Absolutely incredible. It's one of the best things about being out here on foot is all these small little things. If we were driving in a car, there's no ways we would have seen these tiny little guys. So walking around allows you to dig around in the trees and the bushes and be able to find really cool little things like this. So really happy to find these. It's the first time for me to see these guys, especially at this size. Like I say, the ones that James has got look exactly like this, but they are a little bit larger. So I wonder, like I say, if it is the same. But we've been sitting here and we've had quite a few noises emanating from north of us. We couldn't pinpoint exactly what the sound was or who was making it, but it kind of sounded a bit like ellies with a mixture of lions in there as well somewhere. So I want to go and have a look and just check. Maybe we get really lucky and find some sort of sign of the inkahumas coming back. We haven't heard it much more since about maybe 20 minutes ago, but we are heading in that general direction. Genre and I both didn't really get a clear audio for it, so we want to just go and investigate. It could possibly be something like elephants. They do make an wide array of noises, but you never know. Maybe Ellie's bumped into some lions and there was a bit of a kind of altercation, so it'd be worth going and having a look, that's for sure. Alright, so while we go and investigate, Jamie is on her way to Cheetah Plains, I believe, and I wonder what she's got for us there.
I don't have anything just yet, just a simple desire to go and see what's happening at Cheetah Plains, and so we're driving east straight into the rising sun and just enjoying the beautiful morning atmosphere. I'll try again with Gwen's den on my way home, just to see whether or not she's returned, and to see if perhaps we can't begin the process of habituating her cubs. They did see a hyena not too far away. Oh, sorry, that was loud. They did see a hyena on Cheetah Plains driveway, and I've seen her tracks. I've seen Gwen's tracks come out of the den with the cubs along this road, and then she went into Chitwa. So she took them to some kind of a carcass or a kill, some food somewhere. And it's an interesting question because she's a low-ranking, as we've spoken about. As far as we know, she's a low-ranking female in this clan. And generally, low-ranking females tend to wean their babies a little bit earlier, and they will take them to kills rather than dragging kills back to the den site itself. And that's just something that's strictly maintained by the hierarchy of a hyena clan. But Viam raised a good point, which is she's got the den all to herself. Is that instinct so strong for her as a low-ranking female that she still feels the need to take the cubs there? Or would she be tempted by the lack of other hyenas to actually break that mold and bring the food back to the den? That's the lovely thing about hyenas, is that there's so much that we don't know about them, and they've got such complex social structures. And of course that den site is where everything happens. It's the home of a hyena clan. And when it's occupied by the matriarch, you get all of the other... No, thought it was a leopard, it's a termite mound. All of the other hyenas come through and they visit the den site, and they have a sniff, and they sort of chatter away to each other, reaffirm their bonds, and then off they go. But Gwen seems to be out all on her own. It's going to be interesting watching the way that she behaves. Those cubs are still tiny. I feel they seem very tiny to be going off with her on their way to a kill. And Turtle Trekken, speaking of our special hyena, we want to know if they are endangered out here in Africa. They're not endangered, they're not classified as endangered, although up until really recently they were classified as, under certain circumstances, they could be classified as vermin, which meant that farmers could at will, without seeking out a permit, they could remove any hyenas from their farms, which is terribly sad. So hyenas, they're not endangered, but like everything out here, they face the constant problem of a loss of habitat. Hyenas move over enormous distances, so they do face a constant threat in that sense, in that there's this encroachment more and more and more into their space, leaving them very little place to go. But hyenas are adaptable. Brown hyenas are slightly less common. They've been seen once on Djuma. There's more of them in the Kruger itself, but they are not as common as spotted hyenas. But there was a case where, we've been talking a little bit about hyena den sites and where they live. There was a case where a brown hyena walked down the middle of Johannesburg, which is the biggest city in South Africa. Walked down the middle of the road in the middle of the night. And people were all not up in arms, but were all surprised and shocked that South Africa, or that Johannesburg, would have such wildlife wandering in the middle of it. At which point, a series of researchers popped up and said, but they've been denning at the Gululi's interchange, which is one of the biggest highway interchanges in South Africa. It's where the airport meets the highways that travel to Pretoria and then down south towards Durban. And apparently they had a den site there, right up until they redid the interchange and sort of spruced it up. So it just goes to show how adaptable they are. Hyenas and leopards. Leopards also have been found in all kinds of strange places. In a drainage system underneath Ellis Park Stadium, another massive sports stadium in Johannesburg. All kinds of interesting places. Our mole, speaking of habituating the hyena cubs, you want to know if we habituate them in order that they become pets. And the answer is we strongly discourage the keeping of any kind of wild animal or any kind of exotic pet. They belong wild. Stay still. I'm sure that James will have more on the subject, but there are certain tribes in Africa that have habituated hyenas and kept them as pets, wrapped up in chains and with muzzles on them, and it's terribly, terribly sad to see, because a wild animal is a wild animal. Dogs and cats have been bred over generations to become used to us. They've become part of our lives on an evolutionary level. But hyenas, one generation of habituating a hyena cub would not do that, and there's a very good chance we'll bite your hand off one day. Might even just be playing. So no, we wouldn't, and we would never ever let them get to that point. We have a little bit of leeway with the cubs in that we sometimes let them come up, sniff the wheels, shout at them whenever they nibble on the tires because they're very curious. But once they grow older, they grow out of those habits completely. And an animal like that belongs wild. And the more you habituate them, there is a very fine balance, because if you habituate them too much, they become a danger to people. Not so much with hyenas, but with certain other animals as well. So could we? Probably not at this age. They're probably too wild. We would have had to have had them from a tiny, tiny little cub. Would we ever? Absolutely not. I'm going to continue on through Gremlin Hollow towards Cheetah Plains. While I do that, I'm sure James might have some more to add on the subject of keeping wild animals as pets.
Well, I do have a bit more to add on that subject, actually, and it's a fascinating one. But before we add to that hyena subject, I must tell you that that is a brown snake eagle. And it is not so called because it eats brown snakes, is it, Craig? No, it is called the brown snake eagle because it is brown. And I used to get asked by my guests sometimes, "Oh, what accent shall we do today? Let's do a German one. Also, the brown snake eagle is eating brown snakes, is it?" To which I used to answer, "Well, do you think that the black-breasted snake eagle eats black-breasted snakes?" To which the answer would be, "I suppose not." And then I wouldn't get a tip. That's basically how my guiding career went. I wasn't cut out for guiding, really. Now, on the subject of those hyenas, there are two things I wish to talk about. Briefly, I don't wish to give you a lecture, of course. Nobody needs a lecture at this time of the morning. What I wanted to say is that the Game Drive Radio is talking nonsense in my head about lion tracks, but I don't think they're coming this way. Was that, of course, there is the Ethiopian hyena man of Harar, and he is a fellow that feeds completely wild hyenas. And if you want footage of this, you need to go and watch the BBC Planet Earth 2, I think it's episode 6, Cities. In fact, it's definitely episode 6. And they've got footage of this fellow. And they've got footage of these wild hyenas coming into the town. And obviously there's a little bit of sensationalism around it because it's a TV show and that's what happens. Unless it's live, of course, in which case we cannot sensationalize anything. But he feeds these hyenas on a daily basis and they become totally habituated to him. They're still wild, they're not domesticated, and I suppose they could pose a form of danger to him, but he feeds them, and they've become totally comfortable around human beings, but not to the extent that they become dangerous, which is it's very fine balance, and there are very few animals that can do that. And lions are one, for example, that apparently you will never be able to do that around. They will always be somewhat dangerous. Same with leopards. You know, you can raise them as cubs even in a wild area, and then try and release them, and they will release, but they will also become completely unhabituated to you as they turn to adults. And that's the distinction between a wild and a domestic animal. So somewhere between that falls that hyena. Then I would suggest, if you want to see hyenas that have habituated completely to human beings, you need to go to Facebook and find Kim Woliter. And that's Kim, that's his first name, and Woliter is WOLHURTER. WOLHURTER. Kim Woliter. Kim Woliter does a huge amount of work up in Mashatu, which is in southern Botswana, with hyenas. And he films them and he writes a daily blog. I mean, the effort that he puts into it is quite astonishing. But he has habituated a wild clan of hyenas to his presence on foot. And he actually goes and sits by the den, to the extent that the clan has almost adopted him as one of them. They're totally wild hyenas. He does have physical contact with them, and I suppose there are going to be lots of people who say that that's really a bad idea and how dare he, etc. But they're totally wild. They don't depend, he doesn't feed them at all. but he's completely integrated himself into the clan, and I don't see any harm in that, because he's not creating any form of dependency. He's not making them any more vulnerable to life, but he is gaining unique insight into their behavior by living pretty much amongst the clan. So he goes and sits outside the den, and they'll come out and they'll say hi to him and greet him and then carry on about their business. And it's quite fascinating to go and watch. So go and check him out there, and you'll get an idea of what it means, or how amazingly well hyenas do habituate to us. And I think that's got a lot to do with their intelligence. They learn about what's a threat and what isn't a threat much more quickly, I think, than some of the other animals out here do. It's quite interesting. And I suppose they're quite closely related to mongoose, of course, and they do the same. Omkar, a good one from you about the rehabilitation of animals into the wild, and is there any facility out here that rehabilitates wild animals that have been taken from the wild and perhaps kept as pets overseas, and then is there a plan to reintroduce animals like that to the wild? There are a few facilities around here that do that sort of thing, that look after animals that have either been injured or found in captivity, and then there are attempts to rehabilitate them sometimes. But it's very, very, very difficult, if not impossible, to rehabilitate animals, wild animals, to wild areas where they are unfamiliar, because especially if they've been fed, they don't know how to hunt, they don't understand the human animal kind of nexus. So for example, if you find a lion cub that's been raised to a year old and now suddenly it's a handful and somebody wants to reintroduce it to the wild, how does that happen? Well, normally what happens is, of course, that animal doesn't have a fear of human beings, so it becomes dangerous when it becomes an adult in a wild area. And again, there's a story called Christian the Lion, which is quite a nice story, about two sort of hippies, I think it was in the early 70s, who bought a lion cub in London. Somewhere in London they found a lion cub and they bought him, and then he became much too wild and much too big, and they thought, well, this is no good, we can't keep him here, we don't want him to go to a zoo. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they got hold of George Adamson when he was still alive. I think he's dead now, isn't he? And they reintroduced Christian the Lion to one of the prides that the Adamsons used to look after. And it's an interesting story, because the lion was eventually reintroduced. But there's a whole backstory to it, where George Adamson talks about one of his wild lions who actually killed one of his workers. Not wild lions, it was a domesticated animal that he spent a lot of time with. The monkey's alarming here. There, down there, close to the camp. Not very vociferously, but they are alarming. See if we can't spot one. It's right here. It's in the tree there. You can just see a silhouette of it. You see it there, Craig? On that horizontal branch, the lowest horizontal branch. I just want to see where it's looking. There are some all over. This is the landowner's house, and they're all over the trees in his house, but looking off, I'm not sure where to. There are two nyala in the clearings, very comfortable, not worried at all, not even looking up. It might be worth going down past the pan again. Is the dam cam working, Becca? Just keep an eye on the dam cam there. There might be some kind of action going on there. It could easily be Tingana back to look for perhaps Karula. I think he's after her. Not in a bad way, in a romantic way. Anyway, we'll try and find out what's going on here. Tristan is around here. He's also looking for the alarm calling, or whatever's causing the consternation amongst the monkeys, but he's also found something very small to show you.
So we're looking and following up on sounds, but we got a bit sidetracked. We managed to find this beautiful little spixed hingeback tortoise. Now there's actually two of them. They were busy mating, and we've interrupted things slightly. And this is the female that's busy turning around and starting to make her way out of here. The male's already gapped it behind me and started to make his way away. So I feel a little bit bad that we interrupted their early morning entertainment. But the reason we know that she's a spixed hingeback tortoise, if I just pick her up here, I don't want to hurt her. Unfortunately, she's caught in this branch. We know she's a spixed hingeback tortoise because of her very flattened shell. So if you have a look here, the shell itself is very, very flat. On the other species of tortoise that we would get here, the leopard tortoise, you would find a very, very, very domed shell. The other reason is if you have a look here, you've got a little line that cuts through the shell, and that's where that hinge is. So that hingeback name, this is the little hinge, and so what happens is the legs will go inside there, they'll then contract muscles, and this whole back end of the shell will actually close up and seal those back legs in to protect them. And you can see on the front end, she'll be able to pull her head in, and then these little legs there protect the face. They've got hardened scales on the front that protect the face and make sure that it doesn't get hurt. Now these guys are actually very, very, very solid, and they are very, very hard, and so very little can actually get hold of them. The only thing that would really be able to predate on these guys is probably things like hyenas would be the one, and then you would sometimes find that ground hornbills, which is a massive bird that we get in this area. They'll come along and they basically use their big beak to flip this tortoise on its back, and they'll then feed off it like that. So they are really the only two that are capable of feeding on these guys. Now the reason why we know this is a female is it was very easy because she was lying down and the male was on top of her, and he is much, much smaller than what she is. I'll go and try and find him now. I believe he's just behind us here. So we're going to go and show you the size difference between the two of them. I don't know, Jean-Ray, did you see where he disappeared to? He was walking in this general direction. Now you would think that a tortoise would not be able to move too fast, but they actually do move quite quickly. He's probably gone into these thicker areas here, just to hide out away from us, so I'm not actually going to disturb him if he's gone. But like I say, he will be much, much smaller, and he'll have a different shell structure to what the female would have had. Now while I was sitting with that female, we also noticed something else, which we're going to try and see if we can just get them out for you. Where were we now? Here we go. So if you have a look here, you've got a beautiful little entrance. Alright, and so this is made by a baboon spider. Now baboon spiders are quite large. They probably get to about the size of my palm, so very, very, very big spider, and they make these burrows like this lined with web. And so as an insect comes along, it goes in here and it gets stuck and it causes a vibration. The spider then comes and grabs it. So if we put this little bit of stick, or grass should I say, down, sometimes they latch onto it, and we can, there we go, see it starting to come up there. Can you see it there, Jean-Ray? So it's latching onto the grass. I can just see one of its little legs slowly trying to just tease him up a little bit, just so we can get some sort of a sighting of him. But there we go, slowly but surely coming up. Come on. It sometimes can be a little bit difficult, but I can just see one leg coming up slowly there. So they latch onto the grass and then they kind of follow it up, and they have special little feet. That means that they don't get stuck in their web, which is pretty cool. So you can see the size of those legs are absolutely massive. So quite big spider this is, and like I say, it's called a baboon spider, probably just because of its size, and also the hairy kind of color that it has is very much like that of a baboon. So I'm just trying to coax him a little bit further. He doesn't want to come much more. He's pretty happy in his little hole, and they know if they come out of the hole, then they're very susceptible to being eaten. So that's why he's just staying there. But yeah, doesn't seem like he's too interested in coming too much further. But isn't that incredible, eh? Beautiful. Alright, Well, we're not going to poke around too much and irritate it too much, so we're going to carry on looking for those alarm calls that we had. But that was really cool. Often with those holes you can dig and dig and dig and you get nothing. The baboon spider actually doesn't respond, or it's not home. So to have one inside there was really quite epic. Pretty happy with that. It's been a while since I've actually seen a nice baboon spider, so really glad that they were home today. And like I say, we were following up on these alarm calls. It seems like we're in a similar kind of area to where James is. I could hear the monkeys that he was talking about earlier, so hopefully there'll be something around. We're going to check slightly north of him just to see if there's any tracks that we can find. You never know, maybe we'll get lucky and be able to pick up something, like I say, for the lions. But I haven't heard anybody calling any tracks this morning, so I don't think it will be lions. The lions are generally a lot easier to track than anything else, so maybe it's Tingana. He's come back on his territorial patrol. There was no audio for him though, which would be surprising. Generally he's going to call quite a bit if he's in the area. Alright. So while us men, myself and James, follow up on these alarm calls, we're going to go across to Jamie, where she's on Cheetah Plains.
So while the men follow up on the alarm calls on Djuma, we've come all the way to the northern boundary of Cheetah Plains Game Reserve in order to see what we can see. Essentially, yesterday Brent had a cheetah in this area, and we know that the cheetah brothers that generally move about between Cheetah Plains all the way up to Manyeleti, we know that they've been separated for about 5 or 6 days now. I'm not quite sure exactly why. I heard a rumor, but it might just be a rumor that they were chased by some lions. But either way, the coalition brothers have been separated, and they're trying to find each other once again, and I'm hoping that we might find them looking for each other. And that's my plan. And of course, I still have to break the Inkanyeni-less streak that I seem to be going through, in that I have never seen Inkanyeni. Seen her son, her young son, but I have yet to see Inkanyeni in the flesh, which is, I feel, is something that we have to remedy, don't we, Viam? Everybody else has seen Inkanyeni multiple times. I'm patiently waiting for my opportunity to see Inkanyeni. Can't believe I've never seen her. So Inkanyeni is the dominant female leopard in this area. And we're getting right through to the open area. I wanted to see what those testiculars were calling about, but they're chasing each other around. It's a type of bird, by the way. And sometimes they alert us to leopards, sometimes they alert us to snakes. This time they were just having a bit of a scuffle. The wafting. Hyena. No, not hyena. Nonsense. Not hyena at all. No, it is what? Leopard. Not hyena. It's both. That's why it's so confusing. And a gnu. Hello, gnu. Have you seen a leopard walk past you? I think you have. I think you know exactly what I mean. Who would this be now? Can't be Gnormus Gnorman, the gnu. It must be normal Norman, I assume. Did you? Yeah, I assume he's just had a drink, judging from that gentle stream of moisture that just flew from his lips. Or he's got a cold. I don't think so, though. I think he's just gone to have a drink. Excuse me, there are very fresh leopard tracks here. That way. Oh, there we go. Here are our leopard tracks. Smallish leopard tracks, but not female. I don't think, is my gut reaction looking at them. But maybe not big enough for quarantine. Perhaps for Tommy. Not sure. The little pearl-spotted owlet calling somewhere there as well. Oh, he's coming for us, Viam. Charging. Hello, boy. Yes, I was talking to you. Which way did the leopard go? You point. Do you know? Blink 1 for yes, twice for no. Swish your tail. Okay, shake your head. Ooh, getting braver. Oh boy, we didn't have any success with the hyena cubs. Perhaps we should habituate this wildebeest. Sit patiently. Wait for him to come to us. Hey boy. Standing on the boundary. To his right lies Cheetah Plains, to the left in coral, and in the middle us. Such a pretty morning. And even wildebeest look pretty in this golden light. Trying to figure out these leopard tracks. Tomi's feet should be quite big by now, but I've never seen Nkanyeni, so I don't know how big she is. Is she big, Vim?
I think a little bit bigger than Karula.
A little bit bigger than Karula. You know, you see, these are not Karula-sized tracks. These are boys. This is a boy. I want to just go forward a little bit because I just saw a bird feeding a baby in a nest as well. I suppose it could be quarantine. They just don't quite look big enough. Let's see if we can sneak up on Mr. Gnu. See, here they look slightly smaller. It's problematic that they are where they are, because unfortunately we are right on the boundary. Oh, and they've vanished. Let's go check that junction up ahead where our wildebeest is standing. And I also want to... There's a nest somewhere in this tree. There is a nest in that hole on the branch on the right. I want to see which bird it is. A little bit to the right, Vim, I think it is... sorry, when I said right, what I meant was left. The other right, yeah, and up a little bit. And by up, I really do mean up. There, bottom right of your screen. That hole. There. That's got babies living in it. And you can actually see the residue up a little bit. There. That one. There we go. Here he comes. Here he comes. There's a hornbill coming. Let's see if it goes to feed the baby. I think that's the hole they're using. I can see hints of defecation coming out. Come on, hornbill. Wait, I promise it's coming. Promise. Remember how we said patience is a virtue? It's coming. She says, hopefully. Come on, hornbill. I knew that screech, that begging screech, as soon as I heard it. It's a red-billed hornbill in there. Here he comes. Ah. There we go. And done. With a screech, and hornbill is back off finding more food. So inside that tiny little hole is a hornbill chick, potentially 2 hornbill chicks. The female, isn't it amazing that somehow the female managed to squeeze herself in there in order to lay her eggs? And this could well even be the second round of chicks that this hornbill is raising now at this time of year. They might have had some in early November, around December. And the female goes in, loses all of her flight feathers, lays her eggs, and then the male is responsible for feeding her. Now, judging by the volume of those squeaks and the sound of it, my suspicion is that the female's already come out and she's helping the male to feed the chicks in there. That sort of... It's a horrible sound. Right, all sorts of smaller things are being found this morning on our safari. Let's go see which one James has found for you.
We're just having a rather interesting time here with 2 longhorn beetles. And I'm trying to cover them because, of course, as soon as they come into the sun, you can't see them. They just become silhouetted. But this guy's about to take to the air, especially as I'm about to sneeze. Excuse me. Look at him using his little antenna to do something. There he goes. And Herbert always finds that motion very amusing because he says what they're doing is they're waving goodbye before they fly off. Let me try and cover this one up. How's that? You can get a better impression of its colours there, which are not particularly impressive. This one was a bit of a squealer though. I don't know if you know this, but of course longhorn beetles can squeal. And indeed they do. This one is not squealing now though. There. Can you hear it? Sometimes you just have to give them a bit of a shake. No. Right, well, I think you need to fly off now like your friend. Go on. No, but don't crawl off because you're going to get run over or something. Okay, I'm going to put you in the bush. Good luck. Be free. No. Quickly, we have to drive off before it gets under the car. I think it does want to come home with me. Phew. Right, what longhorn that was, I don't know, I'm afraid. Now, I believe I did not quite finish my story of Christian the lion. And the story went, basically, that the secondary part of the story was that George Adamson, one of the guys who worked for him, was killed by one of the lions that he had rehabilitated into the wild because he just didn't have any fear of human beings. And George then had to go and shoot that lion who he'd raised from a cub, and it must have been a tremendously painful experience. But the whole upshot of that is that it so seldom works to introduce wild animals that have not been born in the wild. Yes, if they've been born to the wild, they've been injured and then they're rehabilitated in a rehabilitation center versus a sort of tourist center masquerading as a rehabilitation center, then absolutely it can be possible, and it was possible. We did it with Sindile, of course, the young male leopard who was reintroduced back to this area after he had to do some rehab, and that can be possible. But remember that a lot of the animals that are reintroduced to the wild are either social or they are territorial if they aren't social. So for them to, if they're, for example, an elephant being introduced back into the wild, yes, I suspect they would probably be adopted into a herd. But a wild dog introduced to the wild, would it be adopted into another pack? It's unlikely. A lion introduced to the wild, would it be adopted into a pride? Really highly unlikely. A hyena, almost impossible, I would have said. Well, no, I suppose a young male hyena might be adopted into a clan. A female, very unlikely. And so it's very difficult to introduce a social animal. Then a territorial animal like a lion again, or a leopard. Well, territories are normally full, so if you dump a leopard, say, into, for example, let's say we found a female leopard cub of 18 months, rehabilitated her from whatever cruel fate she was to which she was being subjected. If we introduced her here, she'd be killed probably within a month. You know, I mean, she'd be around Karula, Shadow, Tundi, all those leopards that are territorial here, don't know her, don't have any relationship to her, and she would be seen as an intruder. So it becomes very difficult to introduce animals back to areas. Well, Mobile Paddy, That's a very good question. You say, given the difficulties of reintroducing wild animals, why was Sindile such a success? I'm going to say that I don't know that it was yet, because it will be, for me, it will be a success if he makes it to adulthood. But his removal and reintroduction here, if he doesn't make it to sort of being a territorial leopard, it'll be very difficult to attribute to that to plain bad luck, which many male leopards succumb to, or, you know, his extraction and then reintroduction. But yes, his reintroduction would seem to have been a success, and I think that's because he was reintroduced before the age that he became territorial and back into his natal territory. And his he wasn't old enough to be behaving, for example, like quarantine male leopard, who's now he's 4 years old. He's just coming into his kind of territorial behavior. He's a full adult now, and so he's starting to behave like an adult male leopard. Sindile was just about 2 years old when he was reintroduced back to this area. So he was still nervous. He wasn't trying to be territorial. At the same time, he wasn't so dependent on his mother that he needed to be in her area. He was old enough to be what we call a dispersal male. And I think that's... And remember, Sindile was put in, I don't know how much human contact he had when he was in rehab. It should have been almost none. It was almost none. Sorry, I'm not quite understanding what I'm supposed to do here. Oh, stop, become stationary. Right, I'm with you. Sorry, I thought she said become conservationary. I didn't really understand that. So I'm going to finish my story by saying I don't know how much contact Sindile had with humans when he was in his rehabilitation centre. A true rehabilitation centre, he wouldn't have seen a human being. He wouldn't have even heard one. But I don't know if that happened. Whatever the case, he was certainly successfully reintroduced here. Right, we're going to carry on quickly towards Bushwalk Dam, then down towards Chitwa. In the meantime, Tristan would like to show you a beetle that eats poo.
Yes, and these are my favorite beetles. They are called dung beetles. And so, as you can see, this little one is busy rolling his ball of dung. Now, he's not the most coordinated beetle I've ever seen. We've seen him falling about all over the place. But you can see it's crawled on top of the dung ball now, and is going to do a little circle on top there. And why they do that is basically to be able to orientate themselves. So dung beetles use the position of the sun during the day, and they will use the position of the moon at night to be able to navigate. So once it goes up there, it can work out where the sun is and then be able to position itself to roll its ball in a straight direction, which is pretty incredible. Now, like I say, this particular dung beetle is not the most coordinated. He keeps kind of falling off. I'm going to just get out of his way. I don't want to block him in any way. But he's rolled this ball now to be able to find a female, and the female will then deposit her larvae inside, and that then becomes the food for the larvae for the next year before it will then hatch in the rains next summer. And so he'll have a predetermined place that he has in mind, and that's where he's kind of rolling to. And how he found this dung is by sense of smell. So he would have been flying along and he would have smelt some fresh dung. They often find them in things like elephant, rhino, hippo dung. That's their kind of favorites, because all three of those generally have a lot of nutrients in them. Oh, we've just fallen over. Come on. There we go. It's amazing how they can right themselves. So they use their whole body and their legs, and they're able to then flip themselves back over again. And